Good evening, friends, and we are back again with you for an interesting session for another 2 chapters of the book. And we look forward to your participation and your questions. Let's enjoy the next 20 minutes together on ideating, collecting information, and processing it in the right way. I would like to now request Geeta Nagu to share the 2 topics and the 2 chapters for the evening so that we can all get engaged into some aggressive conversations, and we look forward to your interesting questions. Geeta, to you.
Yes, Rajesh, and good evening, everyone. And today, the 2 topics which we are going to discuss is how we are going to manage our personal funds, everybody's personal funds at this point in time. That is a very important topic. And the next one is uninterrupted supply chain. Post lockdown, your production, your units, all that would have started. But how are we going to manage the supply chain for our businesses is what we are going to discuss.
Lovely, lovely. So supply chain is definitely the critical element of any organizations, the logistics, the management of your inventory, the management of your stock, your forecasting about the same, your dependence on your vendors, your dependence on the logistic companies which are going to be serving your organization to make sure that your customers are taken care of has become a critical point today, especially in the lockdown where we have absolutely seen chaos in the last 45, 46 days, but still by the grace of God, still things have been managed and the essential goods are moving around. Government has relaxed a lot of norms, but from an entrepreneur's point of view, from a business point of view, we all need to critically understand and analyze business. This show is not about business at all. This show is about the people, their concerns and solutions to the problems that they might be thinking in their minds. But we need to address it from a business angle, and that's what is the intention of this book and also these conversations in the evening. So Nagu, what's your take on the supply chain management systems, precautions, and the learnings out of this current scenario?
Thank you, Rajesh. Very valid topic for the discussion today, which is very much in everybody's mind, and it's really happening everywhere. So I, being a person from an automotive background as well, I will compare a supply chain to an assembly line. Now, typically in an assembly line, you will only be talking about certain common terminologies and techniques. The first thing that you always discuss is single piece flow. So you need to have that one piece flowing from, let's say, station A to station Z. It's got to keep flowing. So that's called single piece flow. And then you have something called line balancing. You don't want the piece that is flowing to get accumulated in any one station, thereby leading to a backlog and chaos. Like, let's say there is station A, which produces 500 parts an hour, and station B produces only 250 parts an hour, then station B is considered as an inefficient station. So you'll need to ease that place to bring about efficiency there so that your output is right. Now, supply chain is exactly the same as this. And it will be a little paradoxical on what I'm going to say next, but that's for a fact. The strength of the supply chain is only as strong as the weakest link of the chain. So let me repeat. The strength of the supply chain is only as strong as the weakest point of that chain, which means you will have to always identify which is the weakest point in the supply chain. If you have many, no problems, in as far as you have understood that there is a weakness in the supply chain. That's the primary aspect, not how many. It is, have you identified? So the good news is you know that there are holes in the supply chain. Now you start working towards fixing the gaps, the holes in the supply chain. You fix it, and then you run it again to pick up another hole. You run it again to pick up another gap. As you keep doing this, your supply chain becomes very strong. And then what you need to do is you need to step outside of the supply chain and monitor it as an outside-in view to see how the supply chain works. Because the way supply chain works is my out is your in. My supply is somebody else's receipt. So that's very important. And hence, how that's going to be balanced is going to be the entire game. And if somebody can manage it, once you've set it in motion, I think that's the best situation. It's not alarming. It only calls for a calm mind to get into each and every station to address it, speak to the suppliers, speak to your customer, speak to your vendor, speak to your own team, and understand, explain to them, and try and take their position and give them the importance of the supply chain.
Fabulous, Nagu. That was awesome. I would like to share a concept with the team and the audience that's listening to this conversation. that there is a concept called inventory bounce. When you come across a crisis, there is a lot of fluctuations in the demand and supply. So there is a concept called inventory bounce, which everybody needs to understand in their own businesses, where you fine tune your planning and your strategies related to your inventory, how you can readjust it with the cooperation of your vendors, your suppliers, and your monitoring system. A lot of these decisions can be helpful to you by data management. You need to have artificial intelligence in place. You need to have machine learning in place, where you need to understand the pattern of the demand and the demands of the consumers and the customers. If you are able to critically manage your inventory bounds, you will sustain the recession and move forward in a much more positive way. Inventory is nothing but your cash being locked up without being sent it to the customer. So your supply chain management, most critical element everybody needs to understand is how to understand, recognize, and implement the inventory bounds during a scenario like COVID-19. So this is a lovely learning experience scenario that we need to all take up. So India, Stan Saraf as a question, India does not have a pan-India supply chain ecosystem. Logistics majors cover only a few thousand pin codes. Do you see this scenario changing post-lockdown? Geeta, your take on this?
100% this will change over lockdown, because now itself post-COVID, post-lockdown, when we have started, we are seeing logistics as a big hassle. Raw material is not there, and because the production was not happening, and blue collar people are not available. There is a lot of challenges which is going on in each production setup which is happening. So because of this, the supply chain has got affected. But now we will turn it around, and it will come, because along with this is coming huge opportunity for India at this point in time. And India is going to be the third largest economy. And how is it going to be? It is only a matter of 9 months, 1 year, 2 years, 3 years down the line. So that making India shining is going to happen. So what will happen eventually is the logistics will get into place. As you said, it will get into all places. The infrastructure will get into place. We will get ready for the big game. Now it's all about sustenance, and we are all going to sustain whoever is in whatever place. But what is parallelly happening is in Invest India, they are lobbying to close to 1,000 international companies in Germany, in France, in USA, in GCC, across the world. Our India is lobbying to all the companies, because China is the global factory and all the nations are wanting to de-risk that. So the biggest opportunity which is going to come is our way. India has land, vast cheap land available, and vast manpower, very, very cost-effective manpower. And youngest population in the world, highest is India, and also skilled manpower. For various reasons, opportunities are going to come our way. But right, before which we all have to get ready for the opportunity. Opportunity will not. Anyways, we all have to remember, we have to match the price of China, and we have to match the quality of China. China has huge infrastructure and places in place. They are giants in this. So if we are going to compete, we have to compete with price and quality. If both has to be there, then all our infrastructure, your logistics, your supply chain, your raw material, your automation and production, your efficiency, everything has to be in place. Number one. Fantastic. Number two, when that business is going to come in, it doesn't mean it is going to come to you. Are you lobbying for that business? Is your business development plans in place? Are you pursuing the growth which is going to happen now? Are you aware of it? Are you visible in the decision makers of those companies? Are you visible with your Indo-Japan board is there, your Indo-Germany board is there, your Indo-US board is there. Are you visible in all that? Are you aware? Are you doing business development in all this? That's the second question you need to ask. Then all of this leads to that. This adversity is leading to opportunity, and during the gap, everything gets filled too.
So Stan, my answer to your question is, what we don't have and what gets developed is boosting the economy. So if we don't have the pin code reaching capability today, that is one area which will develop. And Stan, you also need to understand one more aspect of a growing economy. The company which makes the car will fund the development of a road. That is the logic across the world. And that's how the countries which are developing countries get developed. And that's why we have concepts like BOT, build, operate, and transfer. So the people who are interested to sell the cars fund organizations which build infrastructure so that their cars can be sold more. The logistics company which want to reach the pin codes of the country will get instrumental in making sure that the logistics is developed with the support of the government, and the government is going to do the maximum infrastructure investment in these current times to boost up the economy. Expenditure by the government is money in the pockets of the people, and that's what is going to be happening. We already know that 15 lakh crores are going to be invested in the road infrastructure, which will definitely support the logistics industry. And the government overall is going to invest 100 lakh crores in a span of 5 years. The earlier they do it, the more faster the economy will bounce back. Now, how fast this can be done is critically important. And I'm talking about 100 lakh crores for an economy in India, which is around 16 to 17 lakh crores. So it's multiples of the overall turnover of the economy. So we are going to see this happening very, very quickly. Nagu, this question is for you. Pin code reach is something great if it can be achieved. So I'm sure this is going to be achieved. I think that question is addressed. I will take Sandeep Pote's question. There is a great scope for logistics companies in coming time. What strategies logistics companies should have in place to expand and get into multiple cities and also into multiple countries? Yeah, Nagu, your take on that.
No, so this is a fantastic thing. As you start developing your business, all customers are going to talk about only just-in-time supplies. So they don't want to create unnecessary inventory at their end, which means they're going to make sure that the supplier takes a responsibility to deliver. And you don't look at, even if it's the most efficient system like the Japanese system, you don't look at supplying a particular part or a particular container just on road so that it reaches at a given time. You still make sure that you have a given buffer at certain prominent locations, which is what is the advantage, the boom of the logistics industry. And that's where warehousing steps in. Now, everything needs to work in tandem. You need to have the warehouses, you need to have the movers, and that's how the whole thing works. And then obviously the manufacturers, like what Geeta just pinpointed, with all the efficiencies in place, they'll have to start pumping production like nobody's business. You cannot say that this is a quantum I'll be able to produce at this quality. Quality is a given. Prices will have to come down if you start giving in the volumes. And then if you need to give in the volumes, you cannot operate in a given sector, given area. You need to go pan-India. And that's going to be facilitated only by the movers and then by obviously the warehouse people. And then from there, how it goes into the supply chain or into the line for the production and all of the other requirements. This is not just automotive. It might sound a little automotive. This is for any production line. This is exactly the way it works. You take it as pharma, you take it as chemicals, you take it as anything, textiles. This is how it's going to work. And once it expands, it's like fantastic game to play. It'll all start opening up. And this is great news.
Fantastic, Nagu. That is awesome. Mohammed Amir, all the way from Doha, Qatar. Reverse flow of labor would have severe impact on supply chain. Mohammed Amir, the reverse flow of labor has impacted all the industries. But we need to keep one thing in mind. The government is absolutely aware about the reverse flow of the labor, and the cities and the states and the towns that need this labor back is also absolutely understood. But it was in the safety part of the government's decision that whatever happened has happened. We have the most robust system of the Indian railways that our country enjoys. This is the most dense network of travel and transport in the world is owned by India through the methods of Indian Railways. And the same Indian Railways is going to satisfy the supply of the labor force back to the places where they need to start working. And that's going to be unfolding. In fact, the first train leaves on 18th of May. And 18th of May onwards, the trains are going to start moving to make sure that the laborers reach back to the same places where they were needed. So that will definitely help the supply chain. Also, there is another concept called bullwhip concept. The bullwhip, bullwhip. What is bullwhip concept? Bullwhip concept is a concept which tries to regulate the demand. A slight increase in the demand also automatically gets connected to all the suppliers and vendors, informing them that there is a spike in the demand and we need to meet that demand. But we should also be, as entrepreneurs, be careful that that spike should be well calculated. Otherwise, you will be left with unsold inventory. So the bullwhip effect happens during recessionary times and during times of COVID-19 kind of scenarios. But I'm sure the economic strategists and all business planners in our organizations are sharp enough to understand that and make sure that we don't get impacted by that. So friends, we'll move to the next topic now. And the next topic is personal debt management. Nagu, your take on personal debt management in this coming COVID-19 scenario?
So this personal debt is more like, as the title says, it's for the individual more than the company or corporate. So when you look at the individual, I would strongly start with the word called savings. Savings needs to be understood as it is not income less expenditure is not savings. It's totally wrong. You need to have this formula changed to the formula as income less EMI less defined saving, and what's left is what you will go in for doing your expenditure. So Fantastic. It's never going to be inflow less outflow or income minus expenditure. Income minus expenditure, you just don't have excess. All the time you're running short by the end of the month, by the middle of the month. So you need to start with the formula of my income less EMI, then less a clearly fixed savings, which depends on each individual, each family, and then the balance that's left is the expenditure. So let's get this formula right. And the second point that I would like to bring about here is the SSS. It's called triple S, Simple Saving System. All you need to do is you need to inculcate a culture, a nature in you. Even if it's not a nature, make it a nature by first bringing it into a habit. Once you do something for 10 days, which means repetitively, you will make it a habit. So this simple saving system means you only take a particular amount every month, save it. You don't need to fix a cause. You don't have to say, I'm going to put it for my house, or I'm going to buy jewelry out of it for my wife, or I'm going to use it for my daughter's education. Don't fix any agenda to it. Just get into the principle of saving. Simple saving system, SSS. And do this consecutively for 6 months. And by the end of 6 months, you'll see one thing swelling. And that's going to be your confidence level. Once that swells, then you'll come out with a plan that I want to save. You know why? Because now you know that you can save. And then you'll start saying, I will use this towards a repayment. I will use this towards a purchase. I will use this towards my daughter's education, marriage, whatever it is, you will start getting onto it. So that will be my second thing. My third point would be, please knock off your high cost borrowing. Typically, if you look at it, people love to use the revolving credit that's available on a credit card. That's a nasty blow. You're actually playing 36%. On 36% to 42% interest, and you just don't know it. You think it's not there. It is there. There's no free money in the world. There's no free lunch. And this is a whacking. So don't get into it. EMIs are not wrong. Rather, I would suggest do EMIs. Do EMIs like a home loan, because that's a saving, and that's towards creating an appreciating asset. And the next step that you need to do after you've got an EMI going towards an appreciating asset is, please reduce EMIs on depreciating or white goods or gadget kind of things. Buy need-based, don't go by ego-based. Your neighbor having it or not having it is not a reason for you to have or not to have. Your need is what's going to define it. And most of all, see if you can replace, if you've gotten into this already, your revolving credit kind of a situation, see if you can replace your high-cost debt with the low-cost debt. Very simple. Just go to the bank and say you want an additional loan on your existing home loan, and they're going to be happy enough to top it going with your repayment. That's the first thing. Take that chunk of the money, pay off. If that's not going to happen, plan B, restructure the repayment. When you restructure the repayment, you're not going for additional loan. You will be able to get that additional money. Instead of paying 100 rupees, if you can end up paying 80 rupees, that 20 rupees is the additional cash flow in your hand. Use that money to staggeredly pay off your high cost loan. Either way, you get to do this. And finally, I would like to say, advise the family, children, everybody at home to go in for zero waste. Please don't use the word lower waste, lesser waste. It is zero waste. Waste is crime. In our theater, in Kamala Theater, in Sun Industries, we say taking food on your plate for lunch or dinner, where we serve food from the company, is perfectly fine. But throwing food out of the plate is not your right. Therefore, it is not reduce waste, it's eliminate waste. So these are the points you'll want to hold in your mind for a very good situation.
Thank you, Nagu. That was lovely. And we need to differentiate between the need and the greed, and the need needs to be highlighted, and we should ignore the greed or delete it from our lives. Monisha Umesh has got a very interesting question. How are the waste process done for money and debt management? Geeta.
Yes, this was clearly explained step by step by Nagu. Monisha, all I will say is, the master of all this is Robert Kiyosaki, and we should all read. You should start reading the books of Rich Dad and Poor Dad. I always tell that it should be made as the part of the curriculum for the children when they are growing up. You know, that is financial prudence. There's nothing but, Robert Kiyosaki is the father of financial prudence. In a very simple terms, he just told everybody about financial discipline and prudence. So all he says there is no point reducing the expense. You bring down the waste, you reduce the expense, but expense cannot be reduced further to a point. Increase your income, increase your investment, and don't come down on your spirits, don't come down on your dreams. Just keep soaring up and you will find avenues to do it. And then he finds, and through financial prudence, it's all about savings and investment. Investment, it has to be savings linked to investment. As we say, your EMI paid for your property investment, which is an appreciating asset, and that is going to be revenue yielding and at a very low cost. These are all the savings. Money has to be channelized. That is what is going to save you through your rainy days, through your retirement days, and that is your safety net. So first, for prudent planning, gather all your data. Whatever is your credit score, your payments, your debts, your assets, your net worth, your income, what is your incentives which is due to come, everything. Just make a collection of data first, then make two columns, two charts. So that could be your what all is your debts and what all is your net worth and what all is your income. So you first have to collect all this, make two charts, and then analyze all of this. Get to the depth of it and start analyzing. The numbers will start speaking to you. Now, all of you today will have to sit and do this exercise. Collect all your data, make two charts of all your debts, repayment, credit card, EMI, everything put together, as well as what is your net assets, what you have accumulated in terms of properties, gold, your net worth, your income, your salary, your incentives due, receivables, everything. Then start assessing. As Nagu was saying, start repaying the high interest debts, and start taking low interest debts, get into, and also through FD, breaking your FD, because that is fetching you very low interest. You can repay your debts, and you can get into a very prudent, sensible financial planning of getting into a monthly EMI plan for payment of a property or something that becomes a forced saving, and get into proper insurance for you and your family if you haven't covered that still. And start taking care of yourself and all your holdings, your home, your assets and everything, because that has to be safeguarded also in all times, especially during this time.
Thank you, Geeta. That is very interesting.
Super.
We are overshot by the time. So this is the last question that I'll take and conclude. Prabhu Raja is asking a very interesting question. What is your input on going to bank loans for managing current financial situations? Prabhu Raja, the current scenario is everybody on planet Earth will have to take loans to sustain and survive through these current times, because the revenues have been impacted, but the expenditure remains the same or a little bit altered. So the government is going to start taking loans, the entrepreneurs are going to start taking loans, and the people also have to start taking loans. But always remember one thing, Prabhu Raja, the most interesting aspect about a loan is, and a loan induces you to work more. Only when you work more will the economy bounce back. There needs to be transactions which need to be starting happening in the economy. The economy will have funds.
I think, Rajesh, there's a connectivity issue.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, Rajesh.
Yeah, so you need to absolutely be sure that you need to be expense economy also. That is how money will come into everybody's pockets. Spending is critically important for the critical needs, but always keep spending. The economy will bounce back when the government spends, when the entrepreneur spends, and when the people spend. Because I am your customer, you are my customer, it is mutual. If nobody starts spending, the economy will not spin into a positive economy again. So we need to be critically important to be aware about three aspects of life. One is what is the type of attitude that you carry. Your attitude matters a lot. It is critically important to be positive. Second is what is the outlook that you have towards life and towards economy, the current scenario and all of that. That also needs to be very, very positive. So the outlook is also critically important. And the most important is the actions. So it is your attitude, your outlook, and your actions. Your actions need to be positive. And for once, we need to start thinking about everybody around us, including the nation. If the nation survives, the society survives. If the society survives, you and me survive, and we can live happily and peaceful in this world. So be contributive, be a good customer, come into the spend economy for the necessities. There are short-term necessities and long-term necessities, and be a spender. That is what will bounce the economy back, but to the needs only, not to the greed. Thank you so much. Have a God-blessed evening, and we'll connect again tomorrow in the evening with two more topics at 4:15 in the evening. This is Agnello Rajesh. Bye for now.
See you all. This is Nagu Chidambaram signing off. See you tomorrow at 4:15 p.m.
This is Geeta Nagu signing off. See you tomorrow at 4:15 p.m.